What is up, nerds? Welcome back to the BrandNerd podcast. It's season 1, episode 1. And to find season 0, all you have to do is go to YouTube. We have a playlist set up with season 0. So that's where you can find that. But moving forward, this is how we're going to do the BrandNerd podcast. It's just me. You'll see Pete from time to time, I'm sure. And I'll bring in other guests, and then sometimes it'll just be me and you having a conversation. But today's conversation is all about my origin story. There are so many lessons that I've learned in my career, and I want to just unpack this. This is as much about business as it is about finding yourself and personal life lessons. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of go chapter by chapter, tell you what happened, and then also explain the lesson or lessons that I took out of that chapter. BrandNerd started officially on January 17th, 2018. That is almost 6 years ago. But I want to take you back to high school because I feel like that's really where you start to become a real adult person, and that's where this story has to start. That's where this origin story occurs. So I was one of those kids that over and over again, people told me I had potential. You know, oh man, you're talented. You're going to do great things in your life. And honestly, there was a part of me that really embraced that, probably too much. Like I really took that to heart. What I wanted to do is I wanted to be a musician. I was a good student. School came easy to me, so I was very efficient. I found ways to get my homework done in school. I didn't do a lot of studying at home. I took really good notes. I realized if I took good notes in class, I retained a lot of information. So as long as I took notes, I didn't have to study a lot. I had varsity letters. I was in a musical. I was also a prayer group leader and a worship leader at my church in this time. But really, the lesson I took away from this chapter of my life is that potential means nothing without direction and focus. And I had some direction, I had some focus on music. I don't know that I had the dedication that I really needed, but moving into the next chapter, and really these two chapters are connected. College, I went to Greenville College. It's now called Greenville University. The reason I went there is because of their music program. I wanted to be a rock and roll star. Sounds silly to say, but really that's what I wanted. Now they don't have rock and roll star. They don't have rock star as a degree, believe it or not. But yeah, went to college, started a band, did okay in school. Again, school is pretty easy, but college was significantly harder. And I developed bad habits like many college students do, but I was particularly bad around sleep and, especially with the band, we'd stay up really late doing stuff. After 2 years, the band actually had some traction and we decided, you know what, let's explore this full time. Let's go all in. So we dropped out to be a band. And these are actually my earliest marketing days. I was a songwriter, which directly translates into copywriting. We had to sell tickets and promote shows on MySpace and Facebook. That directly correlates with a lot of the marketing activities. The lesson I would take out of this brief 2-year college stint was be purposeful in what you invest your time and money in. Be purposeful. I don't think I wouldn't trade those years because I made friends that I still have to this day. I have, lessons that I will carry with me forever. But what I wanted to do did not require what I was doing. And so I don't think I was being purposeful. I could have started a band at home. I could have went to college for a different degree and still did music on the side. So that would be something that I would recommend to aspiring musicians that would be in the same shoes. I can't remember the exact timeline, but it's measured in months. It wasn't even a full year till that band actually broke up. And the next chapter in my life is really kind of a dark time, a floating time. I had a 3-year romantic relationship come to an end. That put me into a bit of a spiral. Honestly, that like 3 to 4 year period then, that really set up like a 3 to 4 year period of floating, and I was in bands. I would lead worship at a church. I actually got a part-time worship leader position at a church. I worked for Clare Brothers Audio, also now known as Clare Global. It's one of the biggest touring and installed live sound companies in the world. It was a fantastic job for a musician like myself to be around the music world, although it really wasn't a career. These were dark days. Honestly, I look back on them, I see pictures of myself, and I'm like, man, that is not great. The lesson I learned out of this, and honestly, this is a lesson looking back in retrospect, is that even when I don't have a plan, God has a plan. Because there are so many things that happened in that time period that have been so valuable to me. The next period of my life was much more hopeful. After a season of floating and dark years came a season of hope. That's because I met my wife, Jill. We really didn't meet then. We knew each other. We were friends, but we became romantically involved. Eventually, it led to an engagement after about a year and a couple months of dating, and then a very quick engagement. Shortly after we started dating, I actually lost my job at Clare Brothers because they were having sales issues. It wasn't because of anything I did. I got laid off, but it made me realize that I was not in a career, and if I'm going to be married, I need a career. I need to provide. I need to stop thinking about what I want the future to hold and start doing things to make that future become a reality. So I got another job, a better paying job, but with crazy hours at Harley Davidson in their factory, doing very similar work to what I was doing at Clare Brothers in their plant. Instead of testing new speakers, I was testing fuel tanks at the same time, because that was a job where I worked 4 10-hour shifts a week. It gave me some extra time to really put into school. So I went back to school and I got my business degree. In that year and a half where we were dating, engaged, and then married, I got my business degree, I got married, obviously, and I got a job, a marketing job, a digital marketing specialist job. That's the season of hope. And I actually have 2 lessons from this season. One, it's amazing what a good, godly woman can do to you. And lesson number 2 is a lot can change in a year or in a very short period of time, because essentially it was a year from the time I lost the job at Clare Brothers to when I was in a entry-level marketing role with a degree. The next chapter I'm going to call teeth cutting, because I had marketing experience. I have pretty good business sense. I've always been kind of left brain, right brain, can be very logical, but also very creative. And that suits marketing very well. I worked for a company where I was essentially a one-man marketing department and got promoted within it pretty quickly. I was a go-to problem solver for a lot of different things. Eventually, I actually got a seat on the leadership team. It was a silent seat. I did not get a vote. But I got to at least share some opinions from time to time. I was able to oversee product launches This is where I learned how to develop websites because we needed a website very badly. I was tasked with figuring out how to do that very inexpensively, which I realized the only way we're going to do it with the budget we had is if I learned to do it, and I did. But eventually, after 4 years there, I really hit a wall in terms of pay, in terms of responsibility. There wasn't really anywhere for me to go up from there. And so I started freelancing a little bit on the side. I guess all along I was freelancing, but I took freelancing a little bit more seriously. But this lesson, this teeth cutting time, I have 2 lessons for this too. The first one is do the work, earn the right to have a voice, because that's what happened over time. Is I started off as just doing the work, and people realized, man, this is good, and you keep developing a reputation for being the person who comes through, who delivers above expectations, and suddenly you have a voice and you have a right to have a voice. It's not that I never had to ask for anything. Certainly you have to promote yourself. You have to take initiative, and you have to ask. The reason I got on the leadership team is because I asked. I just realized, like, hey, I think you guys need somebody who's got more perspective, more youth, if you're going to be talking about the future of the company. Another lesson, though, is it is so important for companies to avoid the way we've always done things syndrome. This company had so many things that were ingrained in the way that it did business that were just poisonous. I think for the most part, people recognized a lot of the problems. They agreed with a lot of the problems, but actually initiating change, like creating the momentum necessary to change the way you've always done things, is so incredibly difficult. And I was not enough of a leader to get that done in that time. One, I didn't have the authority, but I truly believe you can lead from any position, and I just didn't have it. I also want to mention, in this period working for this company, I had my first 2 sons. And so, I was a dad, husband, church leader, and working this job. And honestly, I have very fond memories of these times and some other memories that are not as fond. Like, for example, it was a long commute to this job, and man, I realized I did not like driving across the county. So this next chapter was when I realized that I kind of hit a wall, and I was wondering what was next. I'd always had it in my mind that eventually I would get my MBA. When I was finishing my business degree, I realized, man, I really excel at this. I enjoy this. I would love to be in a leadership position, even a CEO one day. The other route would be to start my own business, which I always wanted to do, but I thought I wanted to do that after the MBA, after working my way up into leadership positions. But something happened in 2017 at this job, and what it really comes down to is that I didn't get what I was promised in terms of promotion, in terms of a pay raise, and in terms of investing in me. These are all things that I was promised in writing, and they decided because of sales numbers that they were not going to be able to fulfill those promises. And I took a couple months thinking about it, and what I did is I just made a decision that I was going to be very purposeful about taking on more of my freelance work. I was also going to go to the StoryBrand workshop. One of the things that they had promised me and had done the year before was that I could spend up to a certain amount on development, whether it's going to a conference or online learning or something like that. And I was going to go to the StoryBrand workshop for that company, essentially messaging that company. When I found out I couldn't do that, I was devastated because I had read the book. I'd been listening to the podcast for years. I was just really pumped up to do this. And I was like, well, maybe I could still go. Like, I could pay for it myself. It was like $3,000 or something. And I was like, maybe I could do it myself. And it took some time to think about it. There's actually another step that I could get StoryBrand certified. I already use this stuff, this framework in a lot of the marketing that I do around the company. Like, what if I got certified? I'd already registered for the workshop under the company name. And I reached out to them and said, hey, can I push this back a couple months, change all the information to BrandNerd, and went down to Nashville for 4 days to become StoryBrand certified and spent, instead of $3,000, pretty close to like $15,000 till you factored in hotel room, flights, food, the actual certification fee. It was a huge investment for me at that time. I was underpaid. My wife was working part-time as well. So this was huge. This was everything we had to make this happen. Also, I want to say I sat down with my boss and I told them exactly what I was going to do. I said, I'm very disappointed that you're not going to fulfill what we had agreed upon, but I'm going to control what I can control, and I'm going to invest in myself. I'm going to take on more freelancing. I just want you to know that. And I also just wanted to express my frustration with it, and in a respectful way. So I actually wrote it out. I wrote a 1-page letter. I handed it to them in this meeting. And then I followed through on exactly what I said I was going to do. So went to Nashville for 4 days, studied under Donald Miller. It was a mind-blowing experience. I'm outgoing, but I'm introverted. This was a draining experience for me. Being there all day learning and then just essentially going back to my hotel room and taking all the things that I learned and building my BrandNerd message and website all right there in the hotel room. But for the next year of my life, I would work my 8 hours and then I would come home and I'd work 2 or 3 hours on my side hustle that was BrandNerd. I remember my first customer was an American woman living in France, a food blogger, and I helped her build a WordPress food blog and ran her through the StoryBrand framework. She found me through StoryBrand. She had almost no money, and I just wanted a customer so bad. Honestly, it took longer than I thought to recoup the investment. It was a little bit of a snowball effect. It started very slow and built, but I was starting from zero. I slowly built a customer base. You do a job and then you'd have that testimonial, that example. You could put it on your website and, you just continue to get job on job on job and you stack this work. And at that point, I hadn't had any recurring revenue, which was probably the biggest thing holding me back from, becoming a solopreneur. Quitting my job. And I remember having this first phone call with somebody who was looking to bring on a StoryBrand certified guide, somebody that could help them with their messaging and website and just meet on a regular interval to run all of their marketing material through. And it was a really good fit. And I was pumped up. And I thought, yes, this would be amazing. I don't know how confident I was that it would actually happen, but this would be amazing. And that conversation happened, but it took 3 or 4 months till we finally met in person and had a handshake agreement to work together. This retainer would put me over the edge to where I was actually making more on my side hustle than I was on my full-time job. So after this handshake agreement, I go home, I tell my wife, I said, babe, I think this is it. I think, that resignation letter I wrote, I can finally use it. And she was very wise and said, do not hand in your letter of resignation until you have a signed agreement. A handshake agreement is not enough to quit your job. Have a signed agreement, maybe even do the first couple of sessions. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I'm getting ahead of myself. So I go into work the very next day, and, you know, I walk in to my office, and my boss is there and says, "Hey, let's have our one-on-one, and we're gonna do it over here." And I walk in, and it's him and the COO, the same people that, 18 months before I had told my whole plan. And long story short, they said, "We're eliminating your position because of sales being poor. We just need to cut back." And I remember just being like, one, a huge hit to my pride because I thought I was indispensable. I was just in shock, and I'm so glad I just bit my tongue and sat there. I walked out to the office, the typical like cubicle setup, and I was like, somebody just saw me kind of like standing in the middle of the cubicles and like, "Hey, you okay?" And I'm like, I was just let go, and like immediately, like people like what? Like everybody came out of their cubicles and surrounded me like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I think so." I mean, I was devastated. It hadn't really registered to me like, no, this all makes sense. You were literally going to hand in a letter of resignation, and instead you're being let go with severance because you're let go, not quitting. Like there's so many positives to it, but I hadn't even thought of all that yet. I was just, frankly, my pride was hit, and I was sad because I didn't get to say goodbye on my terms. Actually, that was another really clear-headed moment sitting in that meeting where I told I was being let go. As I said, "Hey, do you mind if I go around and just say bye to people?" So I went around, I talked to people. I wasn't crazy for being so shocked myself because everybody else was shocked, and they were, saying like, "I don't know how we're gonna do this without you," yada yada yada. Very touching experience, but literally getting into my car and leaving, I just felt a huge wave of relief. It feels so good to know that you're in the right place at the right time, and I felt like me being let go was God just saying, "No, this is the time. Don't overthink it. Go." And I did. Now, just to prove that I really was planning on quitting, about a month later, I went on a trip to Morocco with my family, and I hadn't even put in like a PTO request. Like I was like, I'm not going to be working here when we go to Morocco. The lesson I learned from this time is put the time in and focus. I only had 2 or 3 hours a day to devote to this. I was a father of 2 boys. I was a husband. I was a church leader. So I was very careful to protect family time. I was very careful to protect, my weekends and, bedtime routine and dinner with the family and all that stuff. But then I also took the time, I worked hard, focused on this activity. The next chapter is called Solopreneur. The first year as a solopreneur, I made more than double what I was making previous to that. And at the time, my slogan was new school marketing for old school companies. I took what I had learned at that job about working for a company that had that "we've always done it this way" syndrome, and I positioned myself as somebody that helps companies get out of that. And it's so amazing the difference from being an internal person to being an external consultant giving advice, and the difference in the way people take it, the way they apply it when there's an outside authority speaking versus, that guy who works in the next desk over. Like it's a very different vibe. And so it was a great first, year and a half working on my own as a solopreneur. Got to work with dozens of companies, a lot of it running them through the StoryBrand framework, helping them get super clear on their message, helping them build and marketing campaigns. And it was so rewarding. And I was doing it out of my home office. I was having to explain to people what Zoom calls were because these people were coming from all over the world. And I found this tool called Zoom that I could use to speak with them and have these long form meetings, which is hilarious now because everybody knows what Zoom is. One of the main messages, in addition to kind of working with these old school companies, is that you need a website. Older companies, particularly back then, didn't think they needed a website. They were like, well, we've never really had leads come in through a website before. They come in through magazine ads, or they come in through word of mouth, and what's a website really doing for us? And so when 2020 hit, because I had this message out there, it really resonated when the world shut down and everybody needed a website. And the lesson from this period, this is my solopreneur period, is something that I heard in a sermon one time, which is pray like it depends on God and work like it depends on you. And that's honestly what I was doing, is I was just doing the work, praying for bigger and better opportunities, but trusting that those opportunities would come and I would be ready for them when they were. And that's exactly what 2020 was. It was a huge opportunity. Right before 2020, I hired an assistant, and that was my first employee, if you will. She's still with me today, by the way. Shout out Betsy. The you need a website message hit so hard in 2020 that we doubled again that year. Ended up hiring another employee to help with all the extra work that was coming in. It was also crazy to get on Zoom calls and people say, "It's really you. I've seen, your videos. I've seen your website." I didn't have like a huge YouTube channel at the time, but on my website, I had like an intro video with me sitting in my office explaining what it is that we do. And people would be like, "It's really you." But the lesson I take from that period is just people are listening even when it doesn't feel like it. Like, if you're putting yourself out there and it just sounds like crickets, that message is getting to somebody, because that message obviously had hit people. That you need a website message had hit people before 2020, because as soon as 2020 hit, they started to pour in. And then, of course, more people found me because of referrals, because of good search results. And so really that was 2 years of plenty from, late 2019 through 2020, 2 years of just growth and no problems. And then we hit some turbulence, what I'm calling growth issues. I had to let an employee go. It was partially financial. I actually had to let my bookkeeper go too, because we just kind of got out of over our skis cash flow wise, and I felt like I should have known that, but I didn't. And my people didn't tell me that we were headed for that. And yeah, it was just an expensive lesson to learn. I had to let my employee go because I realized my workload wasn't going to change much. And I blame myself for that, because I didn't do a good enough job with training, or maybe I should have cut ties sooner if things weren't going well. But I just realized, one, we're in this financial pinch, and two, if I let them go, my workload's not going to like double. It's going to very slightly increase. I guess the thing that really, really hurt was that I just wasn't the amazing business leader that I thought I was. After those 2 years of plenty, I thought, man, I am killing it, doing amazing. And it was time to tighten up. And we did, and we regrouped. But the lesson that I take from that is know your stuff. I'm going to say stuff because I want to keep it G or G. Know your stuff. Know what's going on in your company. I had trusted somebody with my books, and bookkeeping makes me want to take a nap. And, financial situations arose that I was not aware of, and it hit hard. It required a couple months of tightening up and regrouping, which leads to what I would say is the most recent chapter, where I was able to hire again. I hired Devin. I've been able to bring on other team members like Pete, working with Randy Peterson, and many others. I shouldn't name too many names, because then I have to name them all. But I realized that in-person collaboration for my company was way more important to me. So I hired somebody local. I got an office, and we work out of an office. I took on some big design projects and some big technological website projects. Really just stretched me and us further than I wanted it to. I realized I do not like big iterative projects, which is what a big design project requires. It requires lots of iterations, lots of meetings and communication, and you just feel like you take, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or 3 steps forward, 5 steps back. It's just I'm not wired for that. Like, I like to move ahead. I like to message and go. And so those are the things I learned in the past 2 years that I don't want to be doing, which is a really good thing to know. It's important to know what you don't want to do. So we don't want to grow in that direction. I did realize I have a passion for helping local service brands. I love building their websites. I love helping them get the basics of their marketing together. And that's why we have the local service brand checklist, thebrandnerd.com to download it. That's why we look for those customers and we talk to those customers through our content a lot. We also developed a new product, a new StoryBrand product called the StoryBrand Sprint that is launching first thing next year. And that is taking the messaging portion of our project and just bundling it up into a package, because there is so much important work that happens in that it shouldn't be confined to somebody that just comes to us for a marketing or website project. It needs to be something that anybody, any company of any size, whether you're a solopreneur or a personal brand, all the way up to, multi-million-dollar brands, StoryBrand framework is so incredibly beneficial to getting a clear message that resonates with customers. And the process helps you learn so much about yourself as a business, and doing it with an expert like myself. When I do this, it's so rewarding to just see the light bulbs go on for people to come back on the next call and say, I used that in my client meeting, and I can't believe, one, how confident I was in what I was saying, and two, how responsive they were. So those are really the focuses of BrandNerd right now. And the lesson I would learn from this period, after we had the growth issues and we got back on our feet and we started moving forward and we started experimenting, the lesson is it's okay to take your time. Like grandma always says, patience is a virtue. It's okay to experiment, see if it works, and then pull back. Experiment, see if it works, find some success, and lean in. So that brings me to the last chapter, which is a vision for 2024 and beyond. At BrandNerd in 2024, we're going to embrace our niche, which is StoryBrand. It's also embracing local service brands. In addition to embracing our niche, we're going to systematize, particularly around these two things. So we have a package for local service brands. We have our StoryBrand Sprint packages as well. And we're going to systematize, and we're going to become more efficient, and we're going to be able to hire people who are better than me at what they do, better than me at building websites, at building marketing campaigns, at customer service. That is so important to me, that I bring in people who are talented. In addition to that, we're going to podcast and share the learning. And on a personal note, I've got number 4 on the way. So 3 boys, mystery gender to come. But that's what 2024 will be all about. The lesson? Well, we'll see, won't we? We'll see what lessons we have ahead of us. But we're going to be present, we're going to embrace the niche, we're going to systematize, we're going to hire people that are talented, we're going to podcast and share the learning. Thank you for listening. Once again, have a happy new year. If you want to know how to support the BrandNerd podcast, you can do so by just going to our videos on YouTube and commenting, youtube.com/@deploythenerds. You have to put that @ symbol in there. And if you go to the brandnerd.com/podcast, you can subscribe on your favorite platform and leave a review. All right, until next time, stay curious.